Well, I'm going to call to order the July meeting of the MTA Safety Committee. Can we have the safety announcement, please?
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway, or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. Mr. Diodato, are there public speakers?
Thank you, Chair Lieber. Good morning. We have 2 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. Also, in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker will be Joseph Morales, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Morales. A couple of items to speak on today. One, I noticed in the board book, in the committee book for this month, we have, for grade crossings enforcement, MTA deployments, summonses, and warnings seem to fluctuate month by month. So I'm just curious as to, how could we make sure that MTA police deployment stays consistent? That way we're enforcing this issue as much as possible so we could prevent more injuries and deaths as a result of cars and pedestrians, violating grade crossings. And it's similar to fare evasion. If the officers aren't present, it's something people might continue to do. And you should consider undercover MTA PD deployments or even deployments a lot of times to NYPD on highways in the Bronx where I live. What I notice is they'll place a car there without an officer. Cars always tend to slow down in dangerous areas. Something we could consider here. I also noticed that the NYPD crime statistics rates were up for this month. My advice is we should include how many incidents there are related to subway surfing. I've heard Jano speak on this issue before at meetings. It's a dangerous issue. It's a trend on social media. Even if social media networks try to moderate it, they cannot and do not catch everything. The point is, we might think this might divvy down. This has been around for years. We don't know what the trend's going to be on social media. One thing I kind of suggest is this safety committee talks about safety in relation to our infrastructure a lot. One thing we may want to consider is concentrating enforcement where deaths are most likely to happen. Put it like this, for most subway surfers, they know how to balance on the train. The incidents I've heard in the news come when they get hit by the bar at a tunnel entrance, or they get hit by some sort of infrastructure, like an electric box that's where they're surfing. So as the engineers at our agency would know what these things are and know we should concentrate enforcement. Thank you for your time this morning.
Our next speaker will be Christopher Greif.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif. Happy Disability Pride Month and ADA 33. As we talk about the safety of our customers, and that's including seniors and people with disabilities, we want to thank the MTA as well as NYPD and MTA police dealing with these issues that we've been seeing, people on the tracks, on the roof, or especially even on a train that people are acting very inappropriate. Yes, they may have a disability as well, but we still got to remember they're all humans. But NYPD and MTA Police, we thank you so much on this because things are getting a little more safer on our subways. But we always say, if you see something, say something. And it's been very great to see that the MTA Police at Atlantic Avenue dealing with that issue. They did an excellent job getting the person out safe and communicating with them. And especially when we turn off the power, at least we are all alert what to do in an emergency. Thank God no one really got hurt, but as I said, as I allowed our customers, we remind them all, if you see something, say something. But we still need to continue with encouraging more people to see this in our community. But NYPD and MTA Police, let's work together as we are still dealing with the hot weather times. And we see a lot of people may freak out or have any issues waiting for a train or maybe for a bus. But we do need to work together, as well as the Eagle team as well, because we still got fare invasion that still goes on the buses, and as well as subway. So we hope that we can work on that in the near future. And thank you, everyone, and happy ADA 33.
Thank you, Chair Lieber. That concludes today's public speaking portion of the committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Diodato. I want to get approval of the minutes from the April 24th committee meeting. Are there any changes, Mr. Albert?
Yes, on page 4, the last person listed as an attendee, Alita Dupree. Alita is spelled incorrectly. It should be Aleta. That's it.
Appreciate it. With that correction, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Zuckerman, second. Second. There's no quorum present. So I can't get approval. We'll get it next time. Mr. Warren, are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan.
Would you make your presentation, sir?
Please. Thank you, Chair, and good morning. We have the slides. Thanks. The significant security efforts initiated by the governor and mayor last year as part of the COPS, Camera, and CARE program continue to deliver improvements in security, with week-over-week major felony crimes down 14% last week. This reflects a multi-week streak now of reductions. Perhaps more significantly, the rate of major felony crimes per 1 million riders is down 28% versus the same period last year. The YPD's Transit Bureau Chief Mike Kemper will provide greater detail in the upcoming Transit Committee meeting, but let me say that while we see fluctuations in progress towards improved security conditions in the subways, the increased resources and focused procedural changes in police activity are making a difference, as highlighted by the 5% year-to-date overall decrease in major crime. Similarly, and as importantly, crime on the railroads remains very low, which is in part a result of increased and improved patrolling on our trains by the MTA PD. And the TBTA's focus work on addressing toll evasion on the bridges and tunnels is recovering millions in unpaid tolls and identifying and addressing the challenge of persistent toll evasion. As you're aware, employee assaults and harassments are major concerns for us. We have multiple programs in place, but still more being developed to confront this challenge. In addition to increased police patrols, continued improvement in cameras, training, and the introduction of more staff on platforms have contributed to a multi-year decreasing trend of employee assaults seen on the slide. New pilot programs, including the addition of reflective markings on subway platforms to clear up areas where the trains spot conductors at a station, to the engineering efforts to develop cockpit barriers for bus drivers, are just two of the ideas being pursued to continue to protect our workforce. The MTA has a significant program to reduce trespass and intrusion. Track intrusion incidents over the last 12 months are trending down from the spike that occurred in the late 2022. Public messages and the introduction of more staff on platforms reduce the opportunity for trespass. Further, efforts with the state and city health organizations continue to shore up programs and facilitate getting emotionally disturbed individuals the care they need and consequently away from the tracks. And lastly, the development of technology solutions promise even more improvement.
The spike occurred in late 21, though, right, Pat?
Yes,
it was late 22,
I'm sorry,
but it was
yeah.
late 21 that we all got together and started the focus on track intrusions. But go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
thanks. Let me close my security-oriented comments by highlighting the tremendous work by the MTA Police Department. Their presence and enforcement efforts at the 4 major transit hubs, Penn, Grand Central, Atlantic, and Jamaica, have significantly improved conditions at these locations. Further, their increased and focused efforts with train patrols being noticed by our employees and customers as reflected in surveys. Regarding safety, the rate of employee accidents remains low across all agencies. Similarly, the rates of customer accidents remain low, and worth noting, subways are have experienced a decrease in accidents per million riders of over 50% since the peak of March of 21. It's very impressive. Next, you will hear a deep dive on the topic of grade crossing accident prevention, which remains one of the biggest safety challenges in the rail industry today. That said, we now let me highlight now that the Long Island Railroad and the Metro-North Railroad continue to deliver some of the best accident statistics of any railroad in the nation. Agency safety statistics can be found on pages 9 through 20 of the committee book. I will also note that in the committee book you will find details on the security grant programs and the important projects these grants fund. Now, if there are no questions, go ahead.
Is there a statewide rule for, or is it just by municipality, about how far in advance you need to notify motorists of a grade crossing?
It's a federal rule, but there's sort of 2 pieces to it. One, certainly the Federal Railroad Administration is involved, but it's also really a federal highways issue. And I don't know if Shelley or Lori will have anything further to say on that.
Yeah, so we abide by the Municipal Uniform Traffic Control Device as well as ARIMA standards. So there is definitely a code that governs, because they don't want motorists across the country to have different experiences at grade crossings. Grade crossings run throughout the entire nation, so it's definitely embedded in those standards.
But unfortunately, you don't always have the same protections at every grade crossing nationwide that you do at certain ones.
Correct, and even that's governed under the municipal, the MUTCD. So that covers all the different types of crossings, whether it's the emergency notification signs, the passive, the active. So there's definitely standards that we're following.
And how far in advance is the standard now?
As far as
Being
sign.
notified there's a grade crossing coming for signage.
I'd have to look at that detail for you. We certainly can circle back with you.
Yeah, we'll get it right.
Thank you.
Yeah, every certain grade crossings, and you'll hear it in the pitch coming up, there's, the geographic dimensions of the location often dictate what could happen there. Also, just how much traffic comes through the site. So you'll see some sites will just have the crossbucks and others have very elaborate systems in them, and all that comes into play, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in a moment. Yeah.
If it's arms that come down, the train is going to notify that crossing that the arms need to go down, obviously, right?
Right. The trains, they farther up the tracks, they shunt the track and they trigger it essentially, and then they come down.
And speed of train is important in this, right?
It's factored in, yes.
It is factored in.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let me now turn to Chris Diodato from my office to introduce the topic of grade crossing safety, and then he'll be followed by Lori Ebbeckhausen from Long Island Railroad to provide details on the various grade crossing safety endeavors of that railroad. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chief Warren. Nationally, grade crossings are one of the most significant hazards in the transit system. In 2022, the FRA recorded 2,194 grade crossing collisions that resulted in 274 fatalities. All railroads had 14 reportable crossing incidents last year, resulting in 1 fatality. Our goal is to trim these numbers to 0. Safety improvements fall into 3 general categories. Enforcement, that's the MTA PD enforcing highway rules at grade crossings. Education, reaching out to youth and other municipal groups to inform them about the dangers of grade crossings, as well as signs and other digital messaging that is disseminated through our different media platforms. And then there's crossing improvements, the physical modification of crossings to mitigate risk. Working together with our railroads, New York and Connecticut Departments of Transportation, and local municipalities, we are in a multi-year crossing evaluation and, where necessary, improving the safety at our roughly 450 grade crossings within the MTA service area. Our railroads have made much progress in improving safety component of their grade crossings. Grade crossing inspections. So our grade crossing safety improvement inspection team includes stakeholders from the municipalities, the FRA, NISDOT, Connecticut DOT, contracted experts, and of course our railroads. On this slide, you see the progress illustrated. Locations for potential safety improvements are identified in response to railroad feedback, incident data, and recent events. Approximately 249 grade crossing safety improvement inspections have been completed. Many aspects of the crossings are taken into consideration, including roadway approaches, warning signs and markings, traffic volume, existing control devices, pedestrian treatments, and others. Typical findings and recommendations involve improvements to active and passive warning signals and devices, signs and road treatments, pedestrian gates and pathways, signaling interconnectivity, that's between the right-of-way and roadway, CCTV cameras with digital video recorders. Armed with inspection results, the railroads prioritize projects for operating funds, and the MTA leverages grant funding, principally sponsored by the FRA and the FHWA, to supplement these improvements. To this end, the MTA has active projects worth over $60 million in grant funding, covering safety improvements at 85 crossings in our territories. These projects include the installation of CCTV recorders and vehicle detection at 44 of our railroad crossings. Other safety improvements include updated warning signals and devices, pedestrian gates and pathways, crossing panels, signs, and pavement markings. Similar to the April Safety Committee meeting, where Metro North Shelley Prettyman highlighted several railroad safety program areas, this month, Long Island Railroad's VP of Safety, Lori Ebbinghausen, will provide details on their grade crossing safety program. Thank you. Unless there are questions for me, I'll turn the mic over to Lori.
Good morning, everyone. So while I certainly am going to be doing a deep dive into the experience at Long Island Railroad, on behalf of my colleague Shelley Prettyman at Metro North, we also will be sharing what are a lot of our common elements when it comes to strategically managing safety around grade crossings. So the focus, if we go to the next slide. Go back one. Yep. Nope, one more. Okay, now if you go forward one more. Okay, so why are we so focused on grade crossings? And you're going to find the experience at Long Island Railroad is slightly different from Metro North. If you look at the statistics and what's of note, a non-reportable grade crossing is an incident, and those are often reported by our locomotive engineers, where they've encountered somebody that has either driven around the gates or has run across the grade crossing. So those are events that do not result in contact, which are the reportable grade crossing incidents. The reportable grade crossing incidents are where we actually have a pedestrian or a vehicle coming in contact with the train. In 2022, we had 24 total non-reportable grade crossing incidents and 12 reportable grade crossing incidents. You'll see for 2023, reporting through the end of May, we have already surpassed on the non-reportable grade crossing incident side those numbers. It's important to note what's different between last year and even going back to pre-pandemic. In 2019, we were running 200 fewer trains than what we're running today. So we are certainly running a lot more trains, giving engineers the opportunity, unfortunately, to see these types of behaviors more often at the grade crossings. What are we actually doing about it? Before I get to that, I want to go into the volume of what we're seeing, the volume of inventory that we have. So if you go to the next slide. As far as crossings go, and Commissioner Albert touched on this, we have different types of warning devices at the crossings. Our total inventory at the Long Island Railroad, you'll see across the various types of crossings, is 329. At those 329 crossings, all the crossings have the emergency notification signs. That's the sign that you see displayed there, and that sign is critical if anybody's at a grade crossing and they have a concern where they see that the gates are down or the gates are up or something's fouling the crossing. That call to that 800 number will connect them directly to the MTA police so that we can get out there and take the necessary precautions at that crossing. There are crossings that have the passive warning, which is just the signage in the crossbucks. There's crossings that have the active warning, which would then be the lights and the bells and the active arms. So the inventory of crossings, between the volume of train and the inventory of crossings, we're very conscious of what we need to do in order to create that element of safety out in the communities that we serve. So if we go to the next slide. And I'm going to build on what Chris touched on and adding a fourth E in elimination, because having no crossing at all is the best solution. So when you look at education, we start very early. If you go to the next slide. Both railroads are very active, have very active and robust track programs, which are a partnership with our MTA police counterparts. We have Long Island Railroad, a full-time community relations specialist, and 2 dedicated officers. They go out and do classroom presentations. They do Operation Lifesavers and special events, heavy use of social media in partnership with our MTA headquarters communications department. We have the school contests, and the MTA police also have a very robust Explorers program that they use to help us to go out into the communities as well. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that we have had a significant increase, transitioning from the pandemic now back into in-person, a 79% increase in the number of participants that we're seeing across the various age groups. So you'll see elementary, middle school, high school, and then the special event totals for the last, 2022, last year up to this point, as well as 2023. So to date, we've reached over 34,000 participants. Going to the next slide. On enforcement, here is where we're very strategic with the MTA police in trying to manage the behaviors at crossings. We share data with them every month on where we're seeing broken gates, where we're getting these reports from the engineers about what's happening at the crossings. They then use the highway patrol as well as the tracks unit to go out to do both the enforcement and the education. We always want to try education first, but enforcement is definitely a key element of this strategy. In addition to the obedience to the signal indicating the approach of the train, there are a number of other traffic laws that go into grade crossing enforcement. So there's certain vehicles must stop. You're not allowed to obstruct highway grade crossings. You're not allowed to disobey the signs in the state law and the do not stop on track signs. So all of those are elements where the police, through their details, will issue warnings and, if necessary, summons. And you can see the difference from this year to last year as far as the number of summonses that are being issued. Moving forward to engineering, as Chris touched on, we do have very strategic focus. I'm happy to say, first of all, that the delineators and the road striping have been a game changer for us here at the Long Island Railroad. In partnership with Waze, as well as those grade crossing treatments, we have virtually eliminated people accidentally turning onto the tracks at our grades crossing. So that's definitely been a huge improvement for us. But we're also very focused from an engineering standpoint on ways that we can improve at the various crossings based on the traffic configurations there. We do have preemption, which is an advanced or simultaneous warning at 55 of our crossings, and that's really to help clear crossings as the train shunts the circuit and the active warning devices trigger. That also will trigger with the traffic lights a way for us to clear the crossing. So if the light is on the other side of the crossing, it creates the green so that traffic can clear. If on the other side of the crossing it turns red so that the traffic is stopping. So we're trying to really engineer out people getting trapped on the tracks, if you will, or trapping themselves on the tracks by not obeying the law. We also have grant funding at Executive Drive and Atlantic Avenue. Those are 2 areas of great focus for us because of the road configuration there, the parallel roadways that creates a lot of broken gates, a lot of issues at those crossings. So we're working with the grant funding and with our partners at the Town of Islip, Suffolk County, New York State Department of Transportation, Nassau County, to engineer out some of those details at the crossings that create those challenges. We also are instituting CCTV and loop detection systems at 10 crossings as a way to help us manage what's happening at those crossings so that we can see what the driver's behaviors are, and be able to evaluate whether there's other things needed to be done there. And finally, as I said, the best solution is to eliminate the crossings entirely. So prior to MTA construction and development and Long Island Railroad Main Line expansion project, we had only eliminated 2 crossings, Herrick's Road Crossing in 1998 and Roslyn Road Crossing in 2009. We had a historic elimination of 8 crossings, whether over or grade separation, through the MTA construction and development project between 2019 and 2021. That was unprecedented. That was a historic elimination. However, we are still focused on eliminating crossings when we can. You'll see here pictured Meadow Glen Road Crossing and Kings Park is one that we're currently working on. So certainly there's a lot of challenges, and we're very focused on strategically managing and taking advantage of all of these different elements, the 4 E's, to help manage this hazard in our communities. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Mr. Bringerman and Mr. Zuckerman.
Yeah, Lori, I know this went in a few years ago, but can you explain to us the devices that you put in at the Bethpage crossing? The pedestrian warning?
Right. So at Bethpage Crossing, we also have an announcement that gets made when there's a second train coming as a way to help. It's a very, the configuration there is the grade crossing is at an angle, so it's a little bit of a challenging roadway there. So we partnered with Nassau County as well to try to do some improvements, added some pedestrian islands and places there. But the second train coming warning is a critical element of that, given the volume and the road configuration. Is that what you're focused on?
Well, that's visual as well as
Yes,
an announcement,
audible-
right? There's
audible and
there's
visual
a flashing
warning.
light or something that comes on if
Correct.
there's a second
And
train.
it's also, it says in words, second train coming.
Okay.
So that,
Do you have that in any other location, or is it just,
not at this time, just at Bethpage.
okay.
Zuckerman.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. One, Lori, that's minor, or at least a definitional, and one is a more macro question. The minor one, loop detection, just remind me what that term means, please.
So that's when there's a detection system embedded in the roadway that can detect via magnetic the vehicle on the roadway.
It's similar to what triggers a traffic
Yeah.
light when you pull your car. pull to it.
Correct.
Good. A more macro question. I think it would be valuable for the board and the public just for you to maybe state more broadly. You said the reason why it's hard to get rid of grade crossings, it's caught up in a lot of issues and topics, and you sort of very vaguely stated the challenge. I think we have how many in Long Island grade crossings? 100 and something.
So between the inventory of public and private grade crossings, we have over 300, well over 300.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we had a historic of 9, so obviously that's going to take a couple of 100 years to get through all those. So can you just talk about the things that hold us back from actually eliminating the grade crossings? Because I think that's ultimately the biggest question.
So many of the communities in Long Island grew up around the grade crossings, so often there's a density there that makes it problematic to eliminate. There's a lot of building, a lot of residential, commercial. So that always is the first challenge: is do you actually even have enough room to do that type of improvement? And then from there, it becomes a navigating through the funding of it. A lot of the grade crossings, there are numerous municipalities, county, New York State Department of Transportation, that there's a lot of different entities that go into managing, if you will, that one crossing. So that funding-wise also becomes a bit of a challenge.
Track project. I mean, the challenge is in large part, real estate. Do you have enough distance to do an undergrade crossing where you're in effect, knocking out the railroad at grade, building a tunnel underneath with a box, and then restoring the railroad on top, which is what we did in, I think, 7 of those 8 crossings. The challenge is, do you have enough real estate to do that, and then secondarily getting the money to do it, because those are big projects. I would just ask one thing for in the next couple of months, because grade crossings are really a national issue. It's one of those things where New York, we're different in many cases than the rest of the country. But in this area, we have some similarity, although the volume is so great here. Can you give us a snapshot of how to look at ourselves compared to a lot of other places that deal with the grade crossing issues. So we don't have to do that today, but I think that would be useful for self-measurement. Mr. Brown had a question, and then Mr. Albert, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping someone else would ask it, but it's regarding money, really. Going over those grants there, I'm looking at the way the various grants are used, and first of all, I think you guys are doing a great job, especially with the grade crossing thing, trying to keep people from killing themselves. It's a owner's job. I can't understand why people can't see the tracks are there and avoid it. And our problems are substantially different than, say, in the Midwest and the South, where a community will have a mile-long train running through every 2 hours and nobody wants to get stuck behind a train. And it's a different sort of problem than we have with high-speed, frequent trains. And the rules being national do not, as Jano pointed out, do not help us, particularly in this regard. Now, my question is on these grants, other than with the police department, is there anything in the grants that go to our efforts, our employees, the operating expenses of maintaining these systems, going out there and telling people, don't challenge the train? I mean, who's paying for that piece of it? And how much is that costing? And do the grants do anything for that other than what happens with the PD? I mean, I just assume other people, certainly Vinnie's track department, other areas of the system, are going to require human resources. Do you have a position on that, or is it like the same with other capital and operating in the railroad?
Commissioner, I'll start off and just say that typically grant funding is not does not focus on operational kind of funding like maintenance kind of issues. It's usually for something new, although grant funding does frequently pay for overtime for security. That is one area that there is money in that regard. So it doesn't typically do that, but we do through other programs, particularly security programs, we look at trying to support those kinds of missions. But in terms of maintainers, I don't know of any. Maybe you do.
So I would say this, both Metro-North and Long Island Railroad have taken advantage over the years to help support our educational programs. We get a lot of grant funding to do those types of efforts. And even through the, whether it's the car seat grants or whatever the grants are for the engineering solutions to grade crossing. So again, not maintenance, but the engineering solutions, that in addition to third party, that we do have force account costs built into that as well, whether it's for design or actual implementation.
Does DOT bear some of this financial weight? Thank you.
Mr. Albert, and then we'll wrap up if everyone will.
Lori, there was recently a derailment along Borden Avenue in Long Island City, right by the Long Island City Station. Do you know if there are plans to repair the tracks that were damaged and the roadway that was impacted?
I will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chair Lieber and Chief Warren, there are 3 remote speakers.
Oh,
If we have time.
do we? Yes? Okay.
All right. My apologies.
All right. Let's make sure the remote speakers have a chance to be heard. Have we hit all the
first-
board members' questions on this topic? Let's go to the remote speakers in that case. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our first speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Mr. Anthony, here we go.
Oh, what an epic fail, because I was at Nevin Street earlier, but now I'm here. Good morning, Jano. Good morning, Patty. Good morning to the rest of the board members. Jason Anthony here. I totally agree with the comments of Joseph and Chris. There has to be more scrutiny regarding subway surfing, because I have been seeing them myself. Now the trends of TikTok have been moving to YouTube. You guys should visit the exhibit that is in the Oculus. It is it is a reminder that subway surfing is not only a New York City trend. These teenagers are taking it outside the New York City area. Not only that, Giano, I'm taking the New York City subway almost every day. I'm not seeing police presence overnight, although I'm seeing it during the day. Federation is skyrocketing in Staten Island, better known as the Forgotten Borough. We need the Eagle team over there ASAP. The blue lights is a good idea. I already see them on the West 4th Street subway station, but we need them in the front and the rear ends of the platforms. So I'll be mentioning them during Capitol. So that's all I have to say for this month. Thank you, Jano, again.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Alita Dupree.
Good morning, everyone. Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. I wish we were able to speak like everyone else at the beginning so that, the people could see the meeting. What I want to say is we have a condition at 27th Street and 7th Avenue on the number 1 line. That station, for weeks now, they've been selling drugs. There's an open-air drug market in the subway station. Okay, we've been receiving complaints on Twitter. I personally visited the station. I spoke to the people at FIT College upstairs. Everyone's fed up with the situation. What is it going to take for you guys to close that entrance down? As far as subway surfing, the reason why the kids are subway surfing is because they have access to climb the chains. There has to be a way so that they cannot climb up there once they get out, either by locking the doors or adjusting the chain so they can't use that to climb up as a ladder, okay? That's how that gets solved. And another thing, where are the police? You rarely see them. But then again, the MTA wants everyone to believe the subways are safe when they really are not safe. They're not even safe for the employees, all right? So yeah, you guys want to now pass congestion pricing and force us to use the subway, which a lot of people are not going to use. And what's going to end up happening is Uber and Lyft is going to have a monopoly. That's what's happening. So, I'm just upset and outraged with all the elected officials, really, because at the end of the day, the elected officials appoint the board members to this agency. They appoint the chairman. They appoint everyone. So at the end of the day, the elected officials have to be held responsible. And that's what I'm going to say this month. And again, Chairman Lieber, you promised to ride the subway with me last year. You still haven't rolled the subway with me. But then again, I was hoping you would. So, all right, guys, thank you.
Okay, let's
Thank you.
keep moving.
Our last speaker, Alita Dupree.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Jano Lieber. Alita Dupree for the record, she and her. First of all, I'm very appreciative for Andrew finding and correcting the spelling of my name in the minutes. I was going to mention that, and I'll be mentioning that in another meeting. So very appreciative for Andrew's meticulous review of the minutes. In reading the agenda, it shows just how big our system is. And I appreciate the deep dive on the grade crossings. When I did hear the term track intrusion before, and I think about in our subway, that track intrusions happen even on this big system. And it's important to understand why people are intruding onto the track and how much of it is purposeful, how much of it is accidental, and how much of it is people being pushed into the trackway. So how do we minimize that? I think with anything, whether it be grade crossings or subway track intrusions, is going to take a lot of education. I'm not able to be here with you, but my place where I'm staying in Northern California actually overlooks a very busy rail line with about 20 Amtrak trains a day and quite a few freights that most of it moves fairly slowly. So this has to be kept in the forefront because we don't want anybody to get hurt. Railroads are places that require people to be attentive. So each month that we have a different topic to focus on. So I've talked about some different things today, but thank you for taking my testimony. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. That's a wrap for speakers.
We managed to get to all the speakers. I am now informed that we have a quorum, and therefore we previously asked for comments on the minutes. We got one. There was a motion. Second. All in favor. The minutes are approved. With that, I think that I can call for a motion to adjourn. Second. We are in adjournment. Thank you, everybody.